Why does the million-word gap matter when it comes to child development and eventually their success in the bigger world?
Well, thanks to advances in neuroscience and functional MRIs, we actually can now visually see what's happening in the brain when we're reading. And we know that building a larger vocabulary and having access to words actually changes the way the brain develops. In fact, we're not hardwired to learn to read. Writing has only existed since 3100 BC. So when we think about learning to speak, we're innately programmed to do that. We could put a baby in a room and have people speaking around that baby, and they're going to learn to talk. But that's not the case with children in reading. We actually have to have some connections made in the brain before children can learn to read. Reading takes place in multiple parts of the brain. And we know now that the more exposure a child has to vocabulary and to reading experiences, the more we create those connections to those different parts of the brain. We know that we build white matter, neural fibers, that are making connections from one part of the brain that might identify a word to another part of the brain that might actually help you decode the word. So when we have literacy experiences and reading to children, we're actually growing that white matter. That white matter acts like a highway, so it works. If the highway is wide and smooth, then information is going to move at lightning speed from one part of the brain to the other. Children who have learning disabilities like dyslexia, for example, we know have compromised white matter pathways. And thanks to what we're finding out about the brain, we're getting a better and better sense of what we need to be doing to teach children. But just the same, one of the most effective ways we know we can help children be better readers down the road is by starting early, where we know that the brain is in that plastic phase of life, that we can grow vocabulary and help them access more words that will in turn help them access the words on the page.
So how do you start out that process when the child is just sort of beginning to acquire language skills? How do you help them make those connections?
Yeah, people ask what's the right age to start reading to your child, and the answer is day one. Yeah. Babies should be read too. And we talked a little bit earlier about the importance of making reading a really comfortable, quiet, fun time in your house. And babies love to be cuddled. So why not do that with a book? And it's going to change a little bit. The way you read to your child is going to change through the developmental phases of life. When babies are young, we want to have books that are all around them like toys. And we want the books to be durable, because we know that babies are going to put books in their mouths. So we want them to be made out of something that doesn't dissolve. We want books to be able to go in the bathtub. So they might be made out of plastic, non-toxic plastic, that babies can always be handling books and looking at books like they're an integral part of their life. In fact, pediatric physicians have started to recognize that part of health and well-being includes reading. So it's not just food and shelter and water, but reading is right there as well. So they've started to encourage parents, the first baby visits that they have, to start reading with their children as part of making their children healthy. When we start to move through the ages and we get to toddlers, toddlers actually don't sit in our laps as well as babies do. We know babies will sit for a long time. Toddlers, not so much.
No.
So we want to start using books like this one, Cats, which again, it's still durable, but we know that we've got a child who wants to be interactive and active. So this book has texture and different things that the toddlers can actually do. We can pull pages, although this one doesn't want to pull. Like, this one's very, it does. There's the cat playing with the yarn. We have lift the flap books. We have books that children can point and identify things on the pages. Those are all things that really cater to the developmental stage of the child. And then if we want to look at the opposite end of the spectrum, people say, well, I stopped reading to my child once they learned how to read. And that's really sad because, even when children can read, there's still value in reading out loud to them. You know, it allows children access to books that they couldn't otherwise access because maybe they can't read it themselves. And it still expands that love of reading, but it still provides opportunities for children to expand their horizons, to gain the perspectives of others, to learn about cultures that are different from their own, to grow a deeper vocabulary. And again, it's that sense of joy that you associate with books, that if a family sits down and reads together, those kids are going to always look at reading like it's such an important, lovely part of their life.